Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined Steven Moffat as he travels the Vortex and arrive at episode number 367. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn.
How are you guys?
I was cheating.
I know it was. I tweaked it.
There's no joke.
Maybe that was the joke.
Oh, you are so meta.
I went Moffat with it. Oh, wait.
Okay, I take it all back. That was kind of awesome.
I'm good. Keith, how are you?
I'm alright. Did you guys have a good week? Do anything fun?
I finished Fire and Fury, the book about Trump's first year in the White House.
How was it? Is it as bad as we suspect?
No, it's not bad. It's not a bad
book
book
is
at
good.
all.
No, the White House is as bad as we suspect.
Fundamentally, it's not good journalism.
That's what I had kind of heard. I was
But
a little worried
Your
about
book
that.
isn't good journalism?
No, but it makes for an interesting read. And it's a lot of what you take away from it, and I suspect a lot of it is probably fairly accurate, but some people might look at it and realize because it's not very journalistic, how much can you really say, this is what happened, or this is what was said, or it's worth reading.
I watched Captain America, First Avenger. That's pretty much it.
No, we rewatched the first two Maze Runner films, hoping to get out to see the third one. We haven't yet.
Some Big Finish news. Big Finish has announced something called the 10th Doctor Chronicles, narrated by Jacob Dudman. So,
Narrated by.
yes, this is in the same line as the 9th Doctor Chronicles, which is narrated by Nicholas Briggs. So this is a series of stories which has kind of a range of actors and a narrator who also does the Doctor. Apparently Jacob Dudman does a spot on David Tennant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, supposedly. I have not gone to listen to any of the trailers or anything for it. But the stories included will feature Lady Christina D'Souza from Planet of the Dead, reprised by Michelle Ryan. It will also feature Sylvia Noble in a story, and Stadine in the same story.
In the same story.
In the same story.
Oh, we can only hope.
It's weird that they've gotten David Tennant to do 10th Doctor stories. Why would they go this route of doing
That's
the
what I
Chronicles?
wasn't sure about either. It would make sense. It makes sense for the 9th Doctor Chronicles, and
Right.
I've started listening to some of them, and Nicholas Briggs is an okay, just not the best. Christopher Eccleston. I just don't understand why they would do it for this when they have David Tennant, like you said.
Maybe he just wasn't available and they wanted to get more out there. So.
Maybe. And, I mean...
Maybe they're hoping that there will still be Christopher Eccleston audio adventures with Christopher Eccleston. And so putting out a line of 10th Doctor audios with this guy that sounds kind of like Tennant but isn't actually Tennant kind of gives them a backdoor into that without invalidating the previous 9th Doctor Chronicles line. That makes sense?
Not really.
No, not really.
Because
I understand what you just said, but that doesn't make any sense.
I'm sure I don't know. Big Finish does what Big Finish wants.
Yeah.
And normally they're,
They're usually pretty good.
okay.
It's kind of a shame with the 9th Doctor Chronicles that I started listening to. The second one features Rose, and it's obviously before they got Billie Piper, so she's not actually in it, which is kind of a little disappointing now listening to it. Had I listened to it then, I probably wouldn't bother me.
Well, I think we look at it from, well, they've got Billie Piper, and they're not under contract. I mean,
It's true.
They contract from project to project, so
Release to release.
Yeah. So I mean, just because you got somebody for one doesn't mean you're going to get them for another, especially if they have other.
That's true. If they're busy actors,
right?
yeah.
And they just can't do it. So.
Maybe that's what this is. Maybe that David Tennant's too busy doing other stuff, and they want to have a 10th Doctor release, additional 10th Doctor release coming up.
Well, that's what I suspect is they can probably only get him in the studio once every year or two, and they think, well, we could go ahead and put content out there that's still 10th Doctor, since they have that. When you say they have something, they do have the 10th Doctor. They have the rights to the 10th Doctor. They have the rights to the 9th Doctor.
Yes.
They have the rights to the 11th Doctor.
Yeah.
So they can do material, but they don't necessarily have the actors to play the characters.
Right.
So.
I wonder if when they talk to them initially, if it's something like first right of refusal. Like, we're going to do a 10th Doctor box set, and we wanted to give you first shot at it. And then if you say no, we've got this guy who's going to step in. We'd rather have you. But
I would presume that they probably asked him first, and then they said no. So they said, well, we have these stories ready. Let's package them differently.
Yeah. Well, there's no substituting cast on this next news item. The original cast of Torchwood is returning for Big Finish's Torchwood Believe.
woo!
First time in 10 years, the original cast returns.
Who's in the original cast, Keith?
Captain Jack Harkness, Gwen Cooper, Ianto Jones, Owen Harper, and Toshiko Sato.
Wow.
All the actors are returning to their roles. And they've had all of these actors do Big Finish previously, individually in Torchwood stories, but this is the first time they're actually reuniting together in audio.
So it'll be set sometime before mid-season 2.
In theory.
In theory. Yeah, I suppose there's that.
You never know what's happening. And they are going to be battling Arthur Darvill. Yeah, he's going to play the bad guy.
Oh! I thought you meant they were like be battling the actor.
Oh, now that would be great. So that's pretty exciting too, especially if you're been listening to the Torchwood audios.
Pretty exciting if you care about Torchwood.
That's why I added that caveat.
And then there's Glenn.
Both are scheduled for an
get
April
excited
2018 release. April of this year. That's it for news.
Ooh. Is there any feedback?
No feedback this week.
Well, let's move on to our retrospective. What were
It's kind of a funny word, isn't it?
Moffatspective. What was it? You were trying to... You came up with a word accidentally.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was.
I don't remember what it was.
I can't remember either.
Moffatspective.
Retrospective. Let's talk retrospective.
Okay.
Moff Pro. No, that doesn't work either. I've been thinking a lot recently about Moffat's tenure, and I've been on record as saying I'm glad he's leaving. I'm glad he's leaving. And now that it's over, there's a part of me that I'm don't get me wrong, I'm still glad that he's gone. It's time for new blood. But I also think maybe there's a part of me that it's not fair to kind of lump that baggage on him, because he is responsible for a lot of good.
He is.
I mean, we can't just look at the dark times that have come at the end.
Think you can almost, not fairly, but you can almost have a J&T look at it, because J&T did a lot of good stuff, but he, by the end of it, he was kind of looked at as negatively.
Yeah.
Having gone back and rewatched all of Matt Smith's run in preparation for this, since I just did Peter Capaldi's run up to Christmas, I have to say I think the first half is better than the second, and that's not because it's Matt Smith. I think he had better ideas of what he wanted to do in the first half, especially that first season is so fantastic. Second season wobbles a little bit, and then we get the kind of mesh seventh season that I don't think works very well. And then he redeems himself completely by doing the 50th, and then he kind of continues on a slightly downward track, I think. While Peter has some great stuff, I don't think he's as consistent as he could have been. That's my shortened.
Almost exactly word for word, I would agree with that. I think 6 is probably a little maybe stronger than 5, but
it depends.
But other than that, almost word for word, how I would sum that up.
I think for the most part, even Series 9 is really good stuff. A lot of those two-parters there's very few bad episodes, I think, in that entire season.
Yeah.
Pretty much just Sleep No More. The rest, I think, are very solid, and I think the two-parters work pretty well. Unfortunately, on Moffat's aspect of it, I think a lot of his two-parters, aside from the end of Season 5, I think most of his Part 2s of two-parters never deliver what he sets up for. He sets the stakes up so high, and once gets your expectations to a certain point and doesn't quite deliver to that level.
It's the best of both worlds problem.
Yeah.
Or the
part 1
is like, oh my God. And then part 2 is like, oh, they resolved it. Okay.
And sometimes his resolutions work better than others. Sometimes he just glosses over things and ignores them.
It almost makes you wonder, was this written as a full story? Did you write the first part and go, okay, I'm done, and then go to vacation and then have to come back and go, oh, where did I leave off? I got to finish this up now, right? You would think that they
But
would.
he's not the only one that has that. Cause
There's a
other
lot of authors
two-parters don't quite work as well either.
Yeah, there's a lot of authors that do that.
Yeah.
So his I think his tenure is marked with that. I mean, certainly there's a fresh boldness that comes in with Matt Smith, and we've talked a little bit about the fairy tale aspects of that run, which in my mind really is kind of where Moffat excels, is the kind of childlike innocence with the bedtime story parts of it, and then as he's gotten older, it almost feels in a way like maybe he's trying to tell more adult stories. Mm-hmm. And which is weird because
when you got to Peter Capaldi,
when he got to Peter Capaldi, but I'm not sure that it met with the same kind of success in that format. And it's interesting because Moffat was responsible for was the Jekyll and Hyde or Jekyll, on the BBC, which was a very dark
and Coupling was adult humor,
and both of those worked within the format constraints
Sherlock
they had.
At times is fairly dark.
And I think maybe, I hate to do this because I love Sherlock, but I think maybe Sherlock is part of the reason that Capaldi's tenure, we at the end of Matt Smith in season 7 and into Capaldi, we start to see that downturn, as I think his attention was maybe just divided a little too much. That he's, show running 2 different shows. It's hard enough to do one.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why in the States, whenever you see a showrunner leave, and, well, I'm still executive producing, but they've left. For all intents and purposes, they're dumping all their creative energy into creating the next new thing.
Yeah.
But nobody's crazy enough to try and try and do multiple shows at the same time.
I agree with you 100% on that, because as I thought back over it, I think I was kind of a denier because I was enjoying Sherlock so much, and I still thought Doctor Who was really good. I didn't feel like it was really suffering. But when you look back over where Moffat really started putting his attention into Sherlock, I think that's where his era dips significantly the most. Mm-hmm. And I think that while he still continued to do good things with Doctor Who, I can now look back at that and go, yeah, I wonder if maybe he wasn't dividing his attention up with Sherlock, if we'd have gotten some stronger stories in that season, particularly the ones that he was writing. It's one thing to say, you give him credit for the whole thing because he's a showrunner, and he's probably writing these outlines for these other writers and saying these are the benchmarks that I want you to hit. And there's a particular season, I can't remember, was it not last season, but the season before,
the two-parters.
Well, there was the 2 years ago when he was pretty much on everything. Co-wrote everything, and that makes me wonder if he had scripts that came in that weren't quite hitting the mark of his outline, and so he stepped in and he kind of finessed it so that it would.
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of look at it and I think now looking back, I think, you're right. Sherlock that was probably the wrong decision, although we ended up getting a really phenomenal series with Sherlock. And rightly so that they only did, 3 episodes a season and really just kind of focused on those episodes. At least it wasn't like a 6, 12 or 13 series run, which I think would have made Doctor Who suffer even more. But
and I think I wouldn't think it as much if I didn't see a lot of Sherlock bleed over, specifically Steven Moffat's Sherlock, bleed over into his time as Doctor Who showrunner too.
In the way that he wrote some stories.
Yes, and the way that the Doctor was portrayed is very similar to how he portrayed Sherlock. It's almost like he couldn't separate the two in his mind, because there are some points where Sherlock was almost very doctory instead of being Sherlocky. Yeah. So I think he needed to do one or the other.
The argument was made that, and I think it might have been Moffat that said it, might have been Gatiss, but that the Doctor is an alien who dreams of being human, and Sherlock is a human who dreams of being alien.
Yeah.
Or godlike. I think it was alien. And there's a certain amount of truth to that, but that's also, I don't think you can put them on two sides of the same coin. It's...
There's always been a certain level of Sherlockianness to the Doctor, but it varies in what kind of Sherlock he is.
Yeah.
Because he's always the smartest guy in the room.
Even more so when Capaldi took over the role. I think
Yes.
that's certainly where you started seeing more of that Sherlock-esque character.
The Mind Palace and
And it's not the first time we've seen that, obviously.
Oh, no.
Pertwee was... the master was Moriarty. That was the direct correlation there.
Tom even has the whole Victorian Sherlock outfit at one point. I mean...
And we brought it back and put Matt Smith in it.
That's right.
So yeah, it's there's a lot of. Thankfully, I think that kind of explains the gap year for Sherlock too. That he was just too busy doing the 50th.
Well, yeah,
and he was smart enough to know that I've got to put the effort and the energy here. And that's one of the things that you can definitely put in the win column is the 50th. The whole.
That's probably his peak.
The whole celebration.
It's probably the pinnacle of his career.
That's my favorite thing that he's done in Doctor Who, and it still to this day is. And I agree. I think that from that moment on, nothing could reach that bar for me personally.
Maybe that's part of the issue of the view of the rest of his run is because it can't reach that.
It's a valid point. I hadn't thought of that. There's and obviously when we're just to make it clear for everybody out there that we're not in any way, shape, or form, if we're talking about the Capaldi stuff versus the Matt Smith stuff, we're not laying that on the feet of Capaldi.
Oh no, absolutely.
Or celebrating the success of Matt Smith. Even we're
I think
strictly.
if you even swap the actors, it would the situation would still be the same.
I think it would too, and I think
Wouldn't that be an interesting see Peter Capaldi play dumb childlike innocence and Matt Smith be grumpy?
I think for me, if Matt had stayed in the role, or if they'd got anybody but Capaldi, it might have been rough. It might have been even more, But I think, and Moffat, I think, knew what he wanted to do with Capaldi's character, and Capaldi came in and made his mark on it. And so I think that really continued to carry the show. I know I'm a Capaldi worshiper, but I really think
he was great.
I really think that was the right casting. That was the right time to bring a different type of doctor in, especially since we'd had the younger doctors for so long. I know that was a turnoff to a lot of casual fans, but on the flip side, I think he won enough people over too. I get just as many, young casual fans tell me that they absolutely love Peter Capaldi and are sad to see him leave. They were the same ones going, "Oh, who's this guy? I don't know if I like him." So I think that's encouraging and to say a lot for him. But you wonder if we hadn't set the bar so high at Day of the Doctor to follow on with a year of changing the Doctor altogether. There's another hurdle you've got to get over. Is you've got a new actor coming in. You've got a new, luckily, a companion carryover.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Maybe it wasn't a good thing.
I'm
trying to say.
Yeah.
I think the best thing Moffat...
What wasn't a good thing?
Having Clara carry over. I'm not a Clara hater.
I didn't say it was a good thing. I just was saying it
happened. Luckily, there was a companion carryover. And sometimes that's...
I see.
Yeah. Obviously, Sarah Jane eased the transition from Pertwee to Tom. Very much so.
I think most of the time the companion eases a transition when they carry over. Most of the time there is one. It's very rare that there's not.
I don't know that Perry eased the transition much.
Well, nothing could have eased that transition.
I don't know that Mel eased the transition much. So there are times when it works and times. Rose eased the transition for sure. There are times when it works and then there are times when it doesn't. And in retrospect, I don't know about Claire. Now, I still think I still go back to Claire was just one season too long. I think if she'd have bowed out at Last Christmas, I think it would have worked much better for her character and much better for the show.
I think so too. I think one of the best things that Moffat
so many
did,
Clara haters.
I'm not a Clara hater.
So many Clara haters.
Jenna Coleman's lovely. She's a wonderful actress, and she did great things with that role.
As my wife said, we were talking about, it's almost her words exactly. She said except for Beautiful Lady, she says she's not bad to look at.
Okay,
she's a good actor, and she did wonderful with the role. Those were the three things she said.
She did wonderful with the role.
But she's in the same boat with you. She's like,
I would gladly trade any and all post Last Christmas Clara episodes for another season with Bill, or any other companion if it meant I got one more season of Capaldi, and not that season with Capaldi. And I'm not a hater. It's just not my cup of tea on that one. But
I think it's great that Moffat, especially looking at his companions, and looking back how you don't realize it at first, but there's the first season with Amy. Amy is the mystery because of the crack in her wall, and then we have Clara, who's a mystery. And it's nice that he starts off that way and then moves out of that, because I think in season 6, Amy's not so much the mystery, and then once the half season of Clara mystery is over, he drops it, doesn't try to put in a new mystery, and then moves on. And I think that worked a little bit better in his favor. And Bill wasn't a mystery.
So you think?
I think it's a little better when when the thrust of the season arc is not the mystery of the companion.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'll give you that. Yes,
because he moves away from that twice.
I don't know if you can necessarily count Amy, because the mystery is really the crack. She just happens to be the recipient of it. Yeah. But
well, no,
I see where you're going,
because it affects her life so much,
right?
Right. In her life
it's not even so much the mystery; it's the companion is so much connected with the story arc,
right?
The companion is connected with story arc with Amy, and then he's right. You step away once we can move on to the next season. Of course, then River becomes the.
Yeah, River is the new mystery companion.
The new mystery companion. And then the same thing with Clara. Although I thought that carried on a little further than I guess once Name of the Doctor comes around, we know what.
Yeah.
But I still think there was little waivers of that as well throughout. But maybe that's because Clara, I'm not thinking that it's the mystery of it. I'm thinking how the companion is so... Even in Day of the Doctor, she's the linchpin for the thing. She's the one that could... She basically... Yeah. I thought the other day, Clara's the reason why the Time Lords... The moment doesn't happen. She's literally the reason. She convinces... number one, she convinces the War Doctor of why he needs to do it or where he's at. And so he goes back to do it. And then he convinces... And then when they come back to help him, she convinces them not to do it.
Yeah,
I mean that's ultimately what it comes down to. There's got to be a different way, and that's how they come up with it. So I mean, she's really the linchpin for that. And then that even continues on, I think, to easing into Capaldi's season, because I mean we're talking more about plots than we are talking about
Moffat plots.
But I suppose they're Moffat plots.
The overall arcs are Moffat.
But we've got that again where she basically is the transitional character for the Doctor, because they have that, we getting to know each other again type thing, and then she's his carer and grounds him into the Dalek, and I mean, and then she becomes
moving on.
Yeah, well, when you get all the way to the end of her death, we're still focusing on her character more than we are anything, because she's suddenly deciding she's can be the Doctor too, and so she becomes very Doctor-like, and that gets her in trouble and gets her killed. So I mean. That continues to me goes on further than just from when she starts in, I almost said the Snowman, but she was in the Asylum of the Daleks. Technically, we retroactively work it. So yeah, I don't know. I've never disliked that. I've never disliked. I always looked at that as this is something different to Doctor Who. We've never had a companion so... I mean, Amy arguably was, but we've never had a companion so integral to the story arc as we did Clara. And I liked that. To me, that was a refreshing change. That was something neat. I thought, let's do this. We take the focus off the Doctor and give the season a little more weight from a different perspective, from another angle. And I've always thought that was good. And that's one of the things that I enjoyed that Moffat did, was introducing the Clara character, having her be a mystery, and then even after unveiling what the mystery and what her purpose was, to go on to have her be such an integral role in the stories. So to me, I liked that, and I thought that was a bold move for Moffat.
I agree it was a bold move, and I agree that I liked it. I don't know that I liked that it was all the same character. I think with the idea of the Impossible Girl, it would have been, and you can tell that obviously it came late, but I think it would have been much more effective had you been able to sprinkle her throughout Matt Smith's era. Just every now and then, Jenna Coleman shows up in an episode, and she's in this episode, and then a season later she's in 2 episodes, and then a season later she's in another episode. And just the astute fans be like, why? They just keep, and you wouldn't necessarily think anything of it because we've always reused actresses. But then all of a sudden she shows up as this companion, becomes this mystery, and everybody goes nuts going, oh, and they drop these clues all the way back here. That would have been a really long game, but it would have been great. Once we wrap up, and it feels a little truncated because obviously season 7 is cut in half, but once we wrap up the Impossible Girl arc, okay, what do we do with Clara now? Because we're done with that. So now what? Well, now she has to kind of become a companion in her own right. And I'm not sure Moffat knew how to transition her to that, because then the next season, she's the love interest. She's got Danny. She's, kind of bouncing around doing this. I'm spending my time here with the Doctor. I'm spending my time here with Danny, and trying to have both lives. And that's a fine arc. I'm not saying there's a problem with that.
I think that's calculated. I think that's where you say, okay, I've already done this with this companion. Now let's try something different. That's what he does. I wouldn't be here to I don't want to be here presupposing what Moffat should have done.
Right.
I look at what he did do and say, okay, that worked for me. That was okay.
See, I liked Clara better in that instance than the mystery of the Impossible Girl. I thought she actually got to be a character
as opposed to a plot point. Yeah.
That's what I liked better.
But see, I don't feel like, for me, I don't feel the romance parts. Not that I'm a romance hater. That's not what I'm saying, but the relationship, the focus between her and Danny, and how that was impacting her relationship with the Doctor. It was an interesting take, but I don't feel like that did her any favors. I feel she's still just a plot piece to be moved around. Then we move into the 3rd season, and it's all about, well, now I'm going to be the Doctor because I've lost Danny. Well, okay, again, that's kind of a logical extension of that story, but I feel like, in a way, you're subverting the character that you've created and expected me to get to know and love, and now you're turning it into something else that I'm not sure I like. And it's like, it just feels like maybe it should have been a different character.
You're making the argument for why I liked it, and here's the reason: because of all the things you said, is they continued to change and do different things with the character, instead of having Sarah Jane be the same character from the time that she's introduced to the Doctor all to the time that she left, which she is. And I love Sarah Jane, and I love all those stories, and I love all of that. But that's very done. Rose is the same. Donna's the same. Martha's the same.
Donna has great growth.
Donna has growth as a character, but it's still Donna. It's still the same thing. Yeah. She still says the same things. She's still looking for the same things. And from the beginning, she's really the foil. I mean, she's the one that that humanizes the Doctor through the entire thing. Whereas with Clara, he continued to make these bold changes and find something for her to do. And when I say find something for her to do, constructively find, you're making it sound like he was like, Anna, what do I do with Clara now? Well, let's try this. That's the way you make it sound. That's the way it comes across anyway to me. To me, it's
kind of the way it feels.
It's okay, I'm done with this Clara story. What new can I do with Clara? And to me, that's what I like. In fact, that's why I like all of Clara's run, all the way up to the very end. Now, I thought the death thing was, I was like everybody else going, oh, gosh, that was, number one, I was glad that he did it where he did it, because I think it kind of worked because it was structurally different, although we all knew that she wasn't dead because we knew she was going to be back at the end of the season. But I really, to me, that was some solid construction. If you've got an actress from this point to this point, do some different things with her. Don't make her be the same character, the same tag along, the same asking questions. Give her some relevance and importance. And when you're done with this story arc, figure something else out constructively to do with her. And I think Moffat did a good job. I thought he did the whole time. I thought he kept reinventing what he was going to do with Clara, and I think to me it worked. And I know you have valid points for why it didn't work for you. That's why it worked for me, because he did continue to find different things to do with it.
I just think there's a difference between, you look at Jo, who goes through a very, she's a almost completely different character at the end of her run than she is when she started. I mean, that's character growth.
Sure.
That's learning from the experiences and doing all this stuff. That's not altering the character to fit the needs of the new narrative you've created.
I don't know if he was doing it
right.
I don't know if he was going that far.
But now you're you're making the argument again. You've already done that with Jo. So, now we're going to do it again with Sarah Jane. Now we're going to do it again with Ace. Now you've cookie cuttered all of the. This is how we make a character grow. We learn through all this. They become different at the end. We learn through all this. So again, they
sure, but they're all different characters to begin with.
But they are different characters. But they all exhibit. With Clara, you can't argue that there was no growth there. There was character growth there to her detriment in the end. But you can't always have struggle, yay, struggle, yay, struggle, yay. Start net, that growth, from a narrow
journey.
Yeah, hero's journey. You can't start from the narrow point to the wide point. It's a narrow point to the wide point. This time they started from the narrow point, widened it out, and then went narrow again, which is different. Again, I think I credit Moffat with being very clever of not doing what everybody else does.
I think he was almost too clever.
It's just it's going to lead me into something else that I came here prepared to talk about. Is I hear on one hand a lot of people say I can't stand all the fan service in Doctor Who, and on the other hand, I keep hearing from people say, "Oh, Moffat, he didn't stick to anything. He didn't care about fan service. He didn't, he just do whatever he wanted to do with it."
Oh,
Moffat's my kind of guy now that I think about it, because he did plenty of fan service without really saying exactly what you wanted to, it to be. And that's what I thought was cool, is he always challenged my idea of fan service by throwing things in there that weren't quite how I had, headcanon them, but gone, okay, we'll just twist that a bit, with the age and with the folding of time, introducing the Mondasian Cybermen on a ship that weren't even the actual Mondasian Cybermen. Zygons, he completely reconstructed the Zygons and how I felt about them and who they were. He did a lot of things.
He made you sympathize for him.
Exactly. He did a lot of things with stuff from classic Doctor Who that a lot of people went, "Oh wow, he's doing this." That's totally a nod to me. And then he would twist it and change it a little bit so that it wasn't quite what I expected that was going to happen. And I had about three other examples, and now I can't think of what they were.
He would truly modernize all of these things. Yes.
Even the Daleks,
Silurians,
to a point, yeah.
The Daleks were probably the failed attempt to modernize.
Well, but we loved what he did with Davros. We really loved what he did with Davros.
The Asylum was a nice new modernization that we hadn't seen before. He just mostly left the Daleks on the back burner through his run. That's the difference.
I mean, his biggest failure was, and it wasn't even him, it was Gaddis's fault, was the victory of the Daleks. That, the Skittle Daleks was really his biggest failure. But he went back. He was smart enough to go back and go, okay, that didn't work. What can we do with the Daleks next? And as you say, Asylum really kind of, I thought, did a much better job with the Daleks. And then the Davros storyline at the beginning of not this last season, but the season before. So,
one last thing on Clara. I see what you're saying, and I think he had. I don't know if he had this from the get-go, but looking back at it now, it's an exploration of the addiction that the Doctor can create almost from the get-go, and her fighting against it, and that's part of what Danny is. It's a subplot of trying to ground her and make her question, okay, where do I belong? And it's losing Danny that lets her go off the deep end. And so, to some extent, he does different things.
That's well said.
But overall, he doesn't, because it's all one big long addiction line.
Well, but
he approaches it different per season.
He throws the element of rehab in that most companions don't get.
Yeah.
And so again, that was a new thing to do.
It's different.
But also he tackles with the end of Clara's story. He tackles the which it's been done before, but he tackles the consequences of the addiction. And so, again, he was bold enough to do that. And your analogy is terrific because that's exactly what it was. It was starting a drug, getting addicted, going through rehab, and then having a relapse, but then having consequence this time. And so I think that again, that's why I think it's crafted so well, and I like it.
That fixes it a lot for me, believe it or not.
I don't think he sat down and had an entire Clara storyline mapped out. I think it came as he went. I mean, I'm sure the mystery, Impossible
that
Girl
part,
story was crafted, but he did sit down each time and go, "What can we do now?" So,
I think after Series 8 and he saw where he left the character, I think that's when he kind of saw the opportunity for the addiction storyline, and then you retcon it through at least season 8, if not into season 7.
yeah.
That actually fixes it a lot for me.
She still kind of stays longer than I think she needs to. I say that, but I like the addiction storyline. It just feels a little too long.
I think the thing is that...
But you need it to be long, too, so I'm so torn about the entire situation.
Yeah.
She's there for a long time, and there are some stories in there that aren't as strong as others. And so I can see where, to me, that's the only place where I can look and say, well, okay, maybe it felt like she stayed too long because there were some stories that I think we were soured on.
And maybe if she hadn't had false goodbyes, like false goodbyes.
Yeah, that does. I agree with that. I
think that's because we said goodbye to her 3 times throughout her entire run.
I
Technically
concur.
4 if you count going into the timeline.
Which I knew that wasn't over. Besides, he pulls her out at the end.
Right,
so.
it's the same episode. Yeah. But so I think that's what sours me on her is the 3 goodbyes. 2 before the final goodbye. And the final goodbye I still don't like. But
Unlike Rory.
Actually, we did have 4 goodbyes because we got another one at the end of this season.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but that's just like Amelia. I mean.
Yeah, true.
Unlike Rory, who we never said goodbye to. He was just a shining constant of the Moffat universe. He was always there, never in any danger. It's not like he got killed again and again.
He didn't get to say goodbye because he got zapped too quickly back into the past. He died all the time, but we didn't get to say goodbye to him.
I think, though, arguably, Amy was the Doctor's companion, and Rory was Amy's companion.
Oh yeah,
really. Yeah, that's why if you look back at it, so realistically, that's
why he was Mr. Pond.
Yeah.
And his dad was also a pond.
Totally. No, but that in a way kind of perfectly encapsulates the Moffat potential. That he would start off really strong with an idea and then kind of peter out a little bit once he got to the resolution of it. Because I think we all enjoyed Amy's story arc. And I think we all enjoyed Rory immensely. And I think we all were a little... So you just can't go to that year anymore? You can't go to New York in that year anymore? They can't get in a car and drive somewhere else? It just became kind of a... I'm saying goodbye to them, but the nature of the goodbye was a little lackluster. I feel the same way about Clara. So she's dead, but not, been living in this one moment of a heartbeat between okay.
Well, so as you guys pointed out when we were talking a couple of weeks ago before, well, it's been a couple of months ago, that he doesn't know how to let a companion go. Mm-hmm. And so that's very obvious through his entire run.
Oh, yeah.
By putting companions in situations where he doesn't have to admit that they're gone or they're dead.
He is like the Doctor. He hates goodbyes.
Yeah.
Which I'm right there with him. I'm fine with that. Here's an idea. Don't kill him off to begin with. If you
got to have a goodbye somehow.
You want to bring Strax back, you know, don't kill him. That's how you bring it back.
I think they could have left it with the way they left Series 6 with Amy and Rory, where they're living their life and they're happy, and maybe the Doctor would drop back in until he regenerated, and then that's no longer the first face he saw, and then he would be off doing his own thing. They would never see him again. I don't think they needed the tragic goodbye.
It didn't have that impact, though. It didn't have that punch.
That's true.
And that's what Moffat specifically is looking for. But you can credit RTD for that as well.
Oh, yeah,
he was
absolutely.
looking for the punch.
And it's almost expected at this point.
I think my biggest complaint about Moffat's run would be this last season, and I didn't not enjoy this last season, and I'm certainly not as down on it as a lot of people are, because I think there are some really good stories in there, and the ones that are really good stories are the ones that weren't written by Steven Moffat, which is interesting because a lot of times I look forward to the Moffat stories because I typically like them better than anything else. But it was this year, it was starting with The Return of Dr. Mysterio. That was such a big letdown for me. And then the 3-part middle of the season there with Extremis, Pyramid at the End of the World, and
The Lie of the Land.
What was the other one? The Lie of the Land, yeah. It just, that was, to me, that was like such a hole for him. And now, the ones that I
write all of those.
Right. Well, he wrote Pyramid with Peter Harness. He did not write
Extremis, right?
No, he wrote Extremis.
He did not write Lie of the Land.
He did not write Lie of the Land. Yeah, but that was a marked. He took it a direction.
Yeah.
So yeah. But that was such a downturn for me in that series, and it's always because I thought the pilot was great. I loved the pilot,
really
and I loved the World Enough in Time and The Doctor Falls, and I love Twice Upon a Time. So there's these, peaks in that, but there's such a valley in the middle there that I think that's what hurt his season for me. But I look back at it, and I have to be a little forgiving because I really think that his heart wasn't in it. I think he really wanted to be out last year or the previous season. I think he wanted to be done, and I think the BBC convinced him to take it for another year. And so I think that maybe that's why it suffered. But there are other good stories in that season that were written by other people. So I mean, they carried that season, I think, and it probably could have been worse if Moffat had written more. But
I think some of the great things Moffat has done has introduced some great new monsters. I mean, the Weeping Angels that he continued kind of are up and down, but I think the Silence for the most part was phenomenal throughout the run.
For me, those kind of go back into the, great start, great potential, kind of a lackluster resolution.
See, I kind of like that they're confession priests. That you forget what you confess, that way, and you just feel better afterwards. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, but
now the Order of the Silence has issues.
yeah,
that's the issue,
there
not
you go.
The actual scream monsters.
Moffat actually said in an interview just recently that he kind of wishes he'd done more with the Silence. That he feels like that was of his creations. That was the one thing that he had kind of dropped the ball on. And then he also admitted that he would have liked to have done the Autons. He said, "I really like the Autons. I don't know why I didn't do an Auton story."
Well, he did. Pandorica Opens.
yeah.
Well, a real Auton.
He didn't really focus it around.
No. But that was a new way to
that's
modernize them Autons.
That's as much an Auton story as it is a Santaran story.
There's
or
more,
Cyberman
there's
story.
more Autons
There's
there.
more Autons in it than there are anything else. I mean, the entire Roman army was Autons.
Yeah.
It's as much a River story as it is an Auton story.
I'll give you that, because they have about equal screen time.
Another thing that I liked about Moffat, and there was times that I was kind of screaming that I didn't, was River. I think that was a clever device. He planted that seed in RTD's era. I thought he did a neat thing with it. I don't know that it was constructively done perfectly, but I think it was done well and it was fun, especially in that second season, or Matt's second season, where we had that whole story arc of her and leading up to the end. I always had a bit of a problem with Name of the Doctor bringing her back because of where we left it, where she should have been, and that would have been already in the library and on the mainframe. But somehow that, now looking back, works so well for me, especially now that we've gotten the closure with Husband's Forever Song. So that's one of the things I now look back fondly on and think, you know what? I think River was a neat idea. It was another one of those things that he sat down and he wanted to toy with it and figure out what he could do, and he kind of deconstructed things and he reconstructed things in such a way that I thought that was really good and clever. And
that might be a fun one to do sometime, as we'll just go back and watch all the River Song episodes in order.
In her chronological order?
In her chronological order, and see if it still holds up.
Well, then you're going to have an MCU issue again.
Yeah, I know.
You're going to have to watch the last few minutes of Impossible Astronaut, Day of the Moon, and...
He's got a point.
All right, we'll just watch them in release order.
Wait, we've done that.
There's a video, actually, that...
There is one.
Narrated
it's
by
kind of out of
Alex
date
Kingston.
now, but...
Yeah. I don't think it includes husbands.
It doesn't have husbands, yeah.
And husbands is... You need it.
Oh, yeah.
I was so skeptical. We're done with River. Just leave it be. You know, like you said, it was a grand experiment. It mostly worked. But husbands really kind of came along and went, "Oh, I needed this.
Yeah.
I didn't know how much I needed this."
Well, and they give her 3 on-screen doctors too, from beginning to end. I thought that was cool. Which is another thing I think is kind of appropriate, that she had one story with 10, most of her story arc with 11, and one story with 12. That was kind of a neat little, footprint on it as well, a bookend. And
it adds such a nice new weight to the line that she has in that in the 10th Doctor story of showed up with a new suit and a haircut. Literally, I mean, it's a completely different Doctor than she was expecting.
Right, yeah,
right.
So much more weight to the whole scene.
It also, I think, very sweetly plays into the 11th Doctor's inability to conclude that relationship.
Oh, yeah.
The look that, when she says, "Oh, where are you at? Oh, we're going to go do this." And that's the last date before the thing. And Matt Smith has this look where he just kind of, yeah. I could totally buy that he never actually got around to actually doing the thing at the end.
Oh, yeah,
That he just couldn't bring himself to do it. I'll leave that to the next guy.
Well, interestingly enough, though, it's accidental that which I think works even better for the storyline, because I agree. I don't think the 11th Doctor would have ever purposefully got to that point. And so to have it be 12 and have it be completely accidental and have quite a bit of time, pass between, works, because you don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to do this because I know where this is going to end up. You accidentally drop it in there and then it becomes situational, and it's like, okay, well, that makes sense.
Don't really have much
you don't
choice
have
now.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And Moffat's also responsible for tying the number of multi-Doctor stories.
Yeah.
We had just as many multi-Doctor stories during his tenure as we did in the entire run of the show, if you count Time Crash. Which, of course, you have to count Time Crash.
But that's not under his tenure. He wrote it.
Well, he wrote it.
But he wasn't showrunner. So does it count as his tenure?
No.
So he's only had one.
Two.
What was the other one?
Not Time of the Doctor. Twice Upon a Time.
Oh, Twice Upon a Time. Well, Name of the Doctor.
Yeah, it's true. Name of the Doctor.
Okay, so 4 if you count the one that he wrote.
That's what I thought you were counting. As I was asking, well, wait a minute, what are we not counting?
He's written more episodes with multiple Doctors than have been in existence.
Yes, he has.
Okay.
Well, for that matter, Deep Breath was a multi-Doctor story.
It's true.
Were there 2 doctors in an episode?
Not together.
Yeah, well, they were in an episode, though.
It's a stretch, but I'll allow it.
Story.
It's a stretch, but I'll allow
Multi-Doctor
it.
story. Overall, though, I think I'll miss Moffat, but I'm with you in the fact that I think I'm ready for some new blood, especially with a new Doctor, a new companion, maybe companions coming on. I think that it'll be nice to have a fresh start and see what we can do from here and have some new ideas, especially if they go to a writer's room mentality where it's a lot of people working on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can get some better ideas if you've got a lot of people, weeding out the bad, bringing it down to the good.
I suppose we should also talk a little bit about what he's done to allow us to get us to a point where we can have Jodie Whittaker as a Doctor. Some could say he didn't do enough, that it should have happened when Matt Smith left, but I don't know if the general public would have been okay with it as much, that they needed
No,
the hardcore fans.
There you go.
That's what I meant. The hardcore fans wouldn't have been okay with it as much, that they needed the groundwork laid with Missy. And obviously, we had the Corsair mention.
Right. I think that was the start of it.
I think it was too.
That was, planting the seed and then cultivating it with Missy. Ultimately,
he always talked about how he wanted to have Peter Capaldi be the Doctor initially, and Matt Smith just wowed him, and so there wasn't even any auditions. It was Peter Capaldi for season 2.
Right.
Part of me wonders if he would have tried to go for a female Doctor
had he done Capaldi first.
Yeah.
Could be.
That's an interesting aspect.
I think with as much as he did to move that forward, I can't imagine he wouldn't have, but at the same time, he obviously didn't. He obviously went with Capaldi. So
to play devil's advocate, and I don't subscribe to this, but there is that chunk of fandom that believes that Moffat is not capable of writing a good woman character.
It's true.
That he's had issues with it throughout the run. And even if you go back and looking at the groundwork that he laid to set up the idea of a female Doctor, and we've kind of always championed, he's the first guy that did it. If you go back and count Curse of the Fatal Death, he already envisioned this. He's already done it.
We don't count it, but but if you acknowledge it,
that one of his, and yet it is a joke. The one time that he did it. So if you couple that with the idea of he's not able to write good female characters, does it then follow that he wouldn't have been able to write good stories for a female Doctor? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know that I put a lot of faith in that. I'm sure somebody out there is going to go, oh yeah, it wouldn't have worked. But
it depends on I guess it depends on what, we need to see how Chris Chibnall's going to write for Jodie Whittaker. I mean, if you go by what Steven Moffat has said in the past, if you write for the Doctor, it doesn't matter who the actor is. You just write for the Doctor. I don't think it would matter. But if he's not true in that statement, that you do have to tailor it to the actor you're writing for, or for the gender of the character, I don't think it's more of a wait and see type situation.
See, I think it's a little. I think that statement in particular is disingenuous. I don't think that you can just say you write the Doctor, because of not necessarily the actor, but because of the different personalities, portrayals, character tics, and everything that's been brought to the screen by the previous Doctors. And when you're setting out to craft a new Doctor, when he set out to craft 12, he knew that 12 was not going to act the way that 11 did. He wasn't going to have the childlike innocence. He wasn't going to have the...
You've got to write him grumpy.
The goofiness. He wanted to go with an older, grumpy Doctor. So you've already tailored that to, I'm not writing the Doctor as the Doctor. And that's another fault almost with the Capaldi era, is that there was so much emphasis placed on, we've changed him and we've made him this, that he felt so very far removed. And I can retroactively retcon a lot of it too. It's the first of the new regeneration cycle, and that, he is a little more scrambled. The Doctor that had come all the way up through the new series to that point was never so far out of touch with his humanity as Capaldi was in that first season.
That's true.
And that's a wrong word, obviously, because he's not human, but,
I don't know, the Eighth Doctor in a particular story arc of Big Finish audience that we just listened to got pretty far away from his humanity.
And it was justified because it was, 600 years spent after 600 years in isolation with jellyfish after a particularly dramatic falling off a cliff. So
it's happened before. So
that's why I can justify it as a retcon. But just throwing that out there. I make it sound like I'm really down on the guy, and I'm not.
I like the reverse change, because so many of the Doctors go from happy to grumpy in their run. They go from the light to the dark. I like that Capaldi went from the dark to the light.
Yeah.
That he gained back his humanity, quote unquote, as his time as the Doctor went on. I really like that about his portrayal.
Yeah, it's definitely a different take on it. But nope, there's a lot of groundwork. And, let's not, even the fact that we have a new Doctor, we owe that to Moffat. If he hadn't, if he hadn't moved the goalposts, the show would be over. So, or we'd have to do a bit of hand waving and explain why we're ignoring the rules, or just everybody be upset that we ignored the rules.
But if it weren't for Moffat,
Moffat did some hand waving, ignored some rules, actually bent some rules to make it happen. Anybody could have done that, though. Yes, Moffat was clever enough to do it in the way that he did. But somebody would have
technically be the last Doctor if it weren't for Moffat?
Yeah, 13 regenerations.
12 regenerations.
12 regenerations,
13 faces.
Yeah.
But that depends on if you count the pseudo regeneration as Moffat did. If you count
that's
the
what I'm
pseudo
saying.
regeneration,
No. If it wasn't for
pointed
Moffat, she would be the last incarnation of the Doctor.
If he wouldn't have written that bit about the pseudo regeneration, if he wouldn't have added John Hurt, she would be the last one.
Oh, you're counting John Hurt in that as well.
Moffat
Then yes.
If Moffat had not stepped in,
had Moffat
we would have got a
Christopher
War
Eccleston
Doctor.
for
We would have never got a War Doctor, and we would never
Right.
have counted
Handy Doctor
as a regeneration. Nobody
Nobody
counted that. Nobody counted that until Moffat said that was.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So, I don't think you can thank him for having a new Doctor.
Well, I can thank him for being forethoughtful enough to say, you know what, I'm not going to leave this problem for the next guy.
Yes, he did that. He definitely did that. He fixed that issue.
Well, that goes back into the whole fan service thing, too, because he could have easily left it for the next guy, and they would have just, like you said, hand-waved it off and not done anything with it. It would have been a Russell T. Davis dropped line of whatever Matt Smith says in Death of the Doctor, where
512.
Yeah, he throws in the... it just throws in a random number. So.
Yeah.
I don't mind the fan service.
I don't mind the fan
like
service either. No, I have never. In fact, I'm glad that he does it. I'm a little leery. The only thing I'm leery about Chibnall is, and maybe it'll be good for the show. Maybe it'll be good. He's not there to just please me as a fan. He's there to please everybody. And one of the things that I think could potentially happen is we don't get as much fan service as we've gotten from Russell T. Davis and Steven Moffat, because I knew all along that Russell T. Davis and Steven Moffat were both fanboys. And so they wrote what they liked.
I'm pretty sure Chibnall was
Chibnall,
too.
I don't know if he comes from the old school of fanboys, though. I think
sure
that
how far back
he's a fan of Doctor Who, but was it classic Doctor Who where we'll get a lot of nods to the past? Or is it he's been a fan of all of the new series? He might be a new Who, convert, and then he writes from that perspective, which is okay too. But I do look at it and go, well, we probably won't see as much fan service next year. So,
well, and to be fair,
as long as they're good stories, they don't
to
have
slightly
That's
play
the key.
Yeah, most important. To slightly play devil's advocate, there were, as much as I enjoyed the fan service, there were times where there was fan service in detriment to the story.
Oh, many times.
As much as I enjoy those aspects of it, it's
Do
just.
you have examples? Because I can't think of any.
Well, I think.
Attack of the Cybermen, not Moffat, but
Well, I was
Attack of the Cybermen.
yeah,
That's.
Colin Baker.
Oh, you're talking about over the series.
No, he's talking
I
specifically
thought you
Moffat. I
meant
just threw that
Moffat.
one out.
Oh yeah, no, I was going to say, yeah, that has happened in the past, but
I think there
I
are.
couldn't think of any Moffat episodes.
I think Twice Upon a Time is very much so drowning in fan service that it really doesn't do the story much.
You've already voiced that, but Keith didn't agree with you as much or as strongly with it.
I think the plot suffers in Twice Upon a Time, and I don't know how much of that is because of fan service. I think Victory of the Daleks could be considered a lot of fan service.
I would agree
where
with
it falls
Victory.
down.
That's not a Moffat problem. That's
true.
again a Gatiss problem,
That's a
but
Gatiss
a Gatiss problem. But I think that ultimately, that's probably the best example because of the fact that if you look back at Victory of the Daleks, it was a love letter to power that did no longer existed, and that was Mark Gatiss's love letter to, recreate that in some way, which he did. I mean, it's a very watered down version of power, but.
And if you really look at it also with a microscope, parts of Day of the Doctor doesn't work because they drop huge chunks of plot to go deal with the Doctor stuff, and it doesn't bother me. But
I think you have to even as a modern day fan, you have to kind of excuse. I think the day gets passed. It's the 50th anniversary special. I mean, look at 5 Doctors. That also some of that suffered because of fan service as well.
As much as I love it, there's not much plot in the 5 Doctors.
Well, and I think it's not as much classic series fan service, but Time of the Doctor has a lot of fan service that makes the plot suffer from Matt Smith's fan service. So much focus on his time as the Doctor and all of
I wouldn't call that
battles.
Fan service. I would call that capping off somebody's run. That wouldn't be fan service. That's capping off an actor's tenure as in a role. I don't think that's necessarily fan service. I think that's a homage, basically, looking back over Matt Smith's era. So I wouldn't count that. Yes, it does make the plot suffer, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't count that as fan service.
Darkwater, Death in Heaven.
How does the fan service... Oh, yeah, with the Brigadier stuff, probably, yeah. I could see that. Although that doesn't make the plot suffer, I don't think. I think it might have been...
It's a sour note, yeah.
It might have been maybe gratuitous fan service, but it doesn't make the plot suffer. That doesn't hinge anything on the plot.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe.
Regardless.
Or irregardless.
Either way.
All right, well, what do we got coming up on the schedule, Sean?
Well, coming up on the schedule, speaking of the Brig, and not the Cyber Brig, we're going to take a look at Candy Jar Books, Lethbridge Stewart, Travers and Wells, although it's not really Lethbridge Stewart, is it? Now that I think about it, I think it's just called Travers and Wells. It's from the worlds of Lethbridge Stewart.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's the subtitle from the world.
It's from the Brigverse. The novella from Candy Jar Books by Robert Mamoni. Are you done? Have you read it yet?
Travers and Wells?
Yeah.
About a third into it, I think.
And
You're almost done, aren't you?
No, I'm not quite halfway.
Oh, okay.
I'm a little over halfway. Thoroughly enjoying it, but I'll get into that next week.
I'm enjoying it too, yeah.
And then the following week, episode 369, we're going to take a look at some more Big Finish. We'll do mainline number 102, which is a 2-story setup, The Mind's Eye, and Mission of the, I believe it's pronounced Virons. Anybody want to chime in on that one and correct me if I'm wrong? The following week, episode 370, we will do one more Big Finish 8th Doctor Adventures, Season 3, Number 4, We're in Dawn, and Titan Comics 12th Doctor, Year 3, Issues 5 through 7, which should finally get us all caught up on the comic front and ready to tackle Lost Dimension, which is just a little further out. So there's that.
Cool. Anything else we need to tackle this week before we close the show?
One more reminder for everybody: if you enjoyed or didn't enjoy our Moffatspective, I wish I remembered what I called it.
I think Moffatspective.
Moffatspective.
I like that.
Okay, if you enjoyed the Moffatspective or didn't, you can always leave us feedback and let us know. Keith, how do they do that?
They can go to our website, travelingthevortex.com, and fill out the Send Us Feedback tab, or send it directly to feedback@travelingthevortex.com. Or you can, of course, reach out to us on any form of social media and let us know what other discussion topics we should tackle.
What he said.
I've got one, by the way, we need to add to the schedule.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Is it Glenn as a grumpy bear?
Fishing some. No. I haven't been a grumpy bear much lately.
Glenn, you're always a grumpy bear.
Been a tired bear.
I think we've all been tired bears.
If that's going to do it until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.